Crow Country is an exploration survival horror game. You play as Mara Forrest, an agent investigating the closed theme park, Crow Country, and looking for its owner, Edward Crow. This game has 15 achievements, and this was my journey to obtaining all of them. The story begins at the year 1990, with Mara driving to the park. Once she arrives, she looks at her missing persons report file, the missing person being the owner of the park. Mara heads to the trunk of her car and grabs some handgun ammo, which can always be returned to for free ammunition for the handgun, and she uses this to shoot off the lock to enter the park. Weapons in this game need to first be manually aimed, then you have to move the reticle with your movement controls, so while you're aiming and firing weapons, you're not allowed to move. Entering the abandoned park, Mara searches through a garbage can. Garbage cans and vending machines can be searched, which has a chance to give you items, but also a chance to give you nothing. This trash can gave Mara a medkit, which can be used to heal for a small amount. This game has 3 healing items, the aforementioned medkit, an antidote, which is able to cure a poison debuff, and a large medkit, which combines the effects of the medkit antidote while also healing for more. Mara enters the park proper and heads into the bathroom, where she finds a pile of bones clogging a toilet. She didn't have anything to get them out, so ignores it for the time being. On her way out, she grabs a pocket light, which can be toggled on or off to provide some light. Back outside, Mara finds a wooden crate, which can be shot at to break. Same with the trash cans and vending machines, these can grant items, but also has a chance to reward nothing. Nearby there is a glass jar, which is similar to the wooden crate, needing to be broken open, but always has an item inside. Exploring further, Mara finds a staff memo. These are all scattered about the park and give hints about how to progress in the story. This one mentioned a bronze key that was dropped into the park's ferry pond, which unfortunately didn't have a spare. Mara reads another memo nearby talking about the ventilator in the ferry pond, saying not to run it. In front of a large crow animatronic, Mara finds a laser sight for the handgun. Mara enters Fairy Tale Town, and as she heads down the lane, she finds a strange code written on some newspapers, 2106. She also finds a small house with a bronze keyhole in the mailbox. Nearby, she sees a bear trap. If she walks over these, she thankfully doesn't get stuck for a few seconds, but she does take some damage. These can be shot at from a distance to activate to prevent accidentally stepping on them. Towards the end of the lane, she finds an injured man. The man mentions that something attacked him and reveals himself to be Arthur Mole. Mara offers her assistance and gives him a medkit, then moves him to her car. She returns to Fairy Tale Town, but heads back to check on Arthur, which gets me the first achievement, checking in on a friend. In the conversation, she states she's been attacked by what hurt Arthur as well. When he asked if he needed to go to the hospital, Mara was silent, just telling him to stay in the car to be safe. Back at the Fairy Tale Town, she finds a giant mushroom head, with a door that seemingly doesn't have a way to open. Heading back to where Arthur was, she reads a note which gives a code for the Tree Lady, 3184. Mara then heads into a restricted area where she comes face to face with one of the creatures that attacked Arthur, a guest. Guests don't do a whole lot, just slowly trudge towards you to attack you. Killing them isn't too difficult so long as you can aim. You also deal bonus damage if you either shoot the enemy's head or are closer to the enemy. Also, almost every enemy can just be ran past or skipped, but it makes it far easier to traverse and explore if you kill them. Mara takes down the first guest, but dies to the second, and this game doesn't have autosave, so since I haven't found a single save location, I had to restart to the very beginning. After doing everything I just did again, I decided to wait to enter the restricted area until I could find somewhere to save. Mara then heads into an area where the next section of the park was being built, Cosmic Future, but unfortunately it wasn't complete before the park closed. She did at least read a memo here that talked about the machine chain that was being used to fix up a swan boat. Heading back into Fairy Tale Town, Mara finds the Tree Lady and inputs the code for her, which turned her around. Unfortunately, in order to move her, Mara had to say a specific phrase to her, but didn't know the passphrase, so instead heads up to where the swan boats are. She reads a memo here that talks about how to fix the swan boat control mechanisms, mentioning requiring an egg to do so. She reads another memo that says it doesn't have to be a specifically made egg, just anything egg-shaped. She sees the machine chain on the swan in the back, so would need to get an egg-shaped item to move it closer to her. With no other options, Mara heads back to the restricted area and manages to take down the guest. At the back of this area, she reads a memo which gives her locations of the save rooms and enters the lounge save room. Save rooms contain an area to save, which are free and unlimited, as well as a book containing all the memos you previously found. Inside the lounge, Mara finds a memo which tells her what to say to the fairy. She grabs a map of the surrounding area which gives useful information like unsolved puzzles and areas you haven't explored. She also sees another map locked up needing a code to open, but as she doesn't have this code, she heads back out, but gets shoved by some spiders who poison her. After using an antidote and running past the spiders, she makes it back to Fairy Tale Town, which is unfortunately overrun with enemies, including a new enemy called Puddles. Puddles do even less than the guest and are really just a minor annoyance. Literally, just one singular shot with the handgun kills them. Returning to the fairy, Mara says the passphrase, "Hear me, O great fairy of fairest forest," and this makes the fairy move out of the way, allowing Mara to access the fairy pond. In here, Mara reads another memo that talks about how to run the water filter, with it needing to be a specific amount of pressure in order to not trigger the ventilator, which an earlier memo said is dangerous. After moving the curtain, Mara finds the filter pump, but didn't want to deal with that just yet and headed into a back room of sorts. Here she finds a memo which details how to find the Ocean Kingdom's restaurant's trident as it was currently in Witchwood. She also removes a secret panel which revealed a cybernetic crow, which was made from a laser sight for a magnum revolver. After collecting this, a message in the top left of the screen states this is one of 15 secrets scattered about the park. Back at the pond to solve its puzzle, Mara finds the valve connecting to the pump. All you have to do is turn the valve a couple of times so that the needle in the pump is a bit past the white, then head to the pump, wait for the needle to be safely in the white area, then pull the lever, which will filter the water in the pond. An obvious target makes its appearance, and after shooting it, the fairy rises from the pond, offering the bronze key to Mara. At this point, I decided to switch over to controller instead of a mouse and keyboard as I felt the aiming system would be a lot easier to use with it. Back outside, Mara kills an enemy using an explosive barrel. These, for some reason, are scattered about the theme park, and shooting them deals an explosive AoE that can severely damage enemies, even insta-killing some of them. There's also electrical boxes, which I believe stuns enemies. Mara then uses the bronze key on the mailbox to the little house, which opens up a way to... where the hell are we? The house led to a dig site of sorts, and Mara finds a memo talking about a crank handle. It was used to lock up an egg-shaped ruby in the Haunted Manor before being locked in a safe in the southeast corridor. Mara didn't have anything for the dig site, so left. Mara then began to go towards Haunted Hilltop, which she could access with the bronze key. She is stopped right at the gate to there by a new enemy, the Spindle. They're a bit difficult to miss, but thankfully they're not that bad. They are more durable than other enemies, but they're extremely slow and easy to juke around, at least in open areas. Mara lures the Spindle away, then heads back to the gates to Haunted Hilltop, using the bronze key to unlock the gate and heads inside. Inside the new area, Mara explores, finding a sign that mentioned points of interest in the zone: the dungeon, Witchwood, the manor, and the crypt. She first finds and enters the dungeon. Here she finds several creatures imprisoned for their crimes, including a mermaid, the big bad wolf, a cyclops, and a deceptive serpent. She also finds a bloody sheet and removes it, revealing a computer. Unfortunately, she didn't have the access disk for the computer, so before leaving, she reads a memo that states the mermaid's cell has a bottle of acid inside. Back outside, she heads over to the manor and crypt, where an enemy sets off a bear trap, meaning you can lure enemies into them to get a free kill. On the patio of the manor, Mara sees a little bell-shaped owl that seems to hoot 5 times. Nearby, she reads another memo which mentions the crank handle again, as it's needed for maintenance in the manor and to access the Ocean Kingdom zone, and that the code to access it has something to do with the crypt. In front of the manor was a bell, so Mara rings it 5 times, which opens the door to the manor, so she heads inside. In the manor, she begins to hear a phone ring and picks up the nearby phone. A mysterious figure is on the other end and talks to her, saying that she's back and that they're glad she's up and about before hanging up. Inside the manor were several paintings that had names correlating to piano notes. Since there is a piano in the center, she plays the notes the paintings mention, starting with F-A-D-E, which opens up the painting in front of her, containing some shotgun shells. Mara then finds an interactable book on the bookshelf labeled The Flames of Hell, and pulling it, well, spewed the flames of hell on her. I don't know what she was expecting. She finds another painting, this time with the note C-A-G-E, and plays it on the piano, revealing a little mushroom boy. He says he can grant her a wish, which he interprets Mara's as her wanting her flamethrower's range to be increased, but seeming as Mara doesn't have a flamethrower, the mushroom can't grant that wish. Mara finds another painting, but this one's name doesn't have anything to do with piano notes, though it does seem to have something inside its mouth, but Mara refuses to reach inside and grab. Mara reads a memo mentioning that the clocks need regular winding with a specific tool, presumably the crank handle. She then comes across the final painting, which did have piano notes, D-E-A-D, and playing on the piano reveals a secret passage, which took her to another maintenance corridor. And here she finds some lockers which work exactly the same as the trash cans, but I think they're literally only in this room. She locates a memo that mentions the shed that housed the big animatronic crow has a hidden panel behind it that lets one access controls for the crow. Mara also comes across a new person who was sick. She was also attacked by the creatures and wasn't feeling well, so Mara offered her an antidote which made her feel better. Once she was less ill, she reveals herself to be Natalie Crow, the daughter of Edward. She too is looking for him as she filed the missing persons report, but she filed it to a different detective, one by the name of Harrison James. Mara was sent instead as Harrison was having trouble with his car. Natalie mentions that her father isn't in his office as she couldn't hear anything inside, not that it mattered as she didn't have the key to get in and the doorknob was being electrified. That was all the info Natalie could give, so Mara continues her explorations. She opens a locker and finds a grenade, which can be thrown while aiming any weapons. She then heads into Pike's office, the person who managed the park. She finds him dead and reads some memos, one that talks about the electrified door, not mentioning it's probably connected to an independent generator, and another that says the doors in the dungeon and crypt are locked electronically and can be accessed with the dungeon computer. Back in the corridor, Mara pulls this lever, which gives her a shortcut back to the dungeon. In the same hallway, she reads a memo that says the power switch to the elevators in the corridors is in Tolman's office on the other side of the park. At the back end of this area, Mara locates stairs, which takes her to Fairy Tale Town's theater, but I decided to come back here later after finishing what I could in Haunted Hilltop. Mara heads back to the haunted hilltop zone by taking the shortcut through the dungeon's Iron Maiden. Back outside, she hears banging and goes to investigate, seeing another person, Julie. Julie says she was trying to get through the door, but it was locked, so Mara decided to find another way around. She then reads another memo telling people to be careful around the manor's bookshelves. That would have been helpful earlier, but not believing everything she read, she goes back to the manor and finds a new book called The Pulling of the Pen, which when pulled gives her a grenade. There's actually 2 useful books that I know of, The Pulling of the Pen and The Beginner's Guide to First Aid, which gives a medkit when pulled. Mara then heads into the crypt, but gets locked inside, with a shotgun pointing directly at her. Interacting with these graves gives you their name, birth, and death date. You can also rotate the heads around in the cardinal or directions, matching up with the compass on the ground. Mara examines another memo that tells her how to disable the trap in the crypt. She would need to focus on the names of the gravestones, ignoring the birth and death dates at least for now, while also paying attention to the ground, meaning the compass. Looking at the graves again, if you take the first letter of the first and or last name, it gives you the direction you need to face that grave's head in. So Estelle gets pointed east, Solomon Wisleby gets pointed southwest, Norby Easley gets pointed northeast, and Solina gets pointed south. This disables the trap and opens the way forward, so Mara goes to grab the shotgun, but it was a fake. When trying to leave, the gate shuts on her as the first mini-boss of the game appears. It's tall, it's got tendrils, and to be frank, I don't know all that it does. One thing I do know is that it tries to crush you with its head, but other than that, so long as you make distance between you and it, the thing isn't terribly difficult to kill. I eventually got tired of fighting it, so tossed a grenade which dealt the final blow. And the hole in the wall it broke out of, Mara pulled a handle which reopened the exit to another corridor, one that was a save room. Mara reads a couple more memos here, one that talked about where an actual shotgun was stored in the park. It was in a submarine and ocean kingdom, the easiest way to access it being shark times 4 and dolphin times 1, whatever that means, and the other mentioning a way to get in the manor, which Mara already figured out. She reads another memo talking about the paintings and piano in the manor, which Mara also already figured out. Mara knows the blocked door, so pulls the lever blocking it. The door opens, revealing Julie. She heads inside and asks Mara for help setting up some stuff. She clears the table in front of the elevator and lays out several documents for Mr. Crow. Once they're set up, Julie goes to look in the cell in the adjoining room. With Julie gone, Mara looks at what she laid out. They were all documents categorizing an incident where one Elaine Marshall slipped away from her parents and entered a cell, a restricted area to guests, where she was attacked by a man in a cage. Julie was the lawyer for Elaine's family. Mara meets up with Julie in the cell, continuing to talk with her. She says the cell has been deep cleaned since the incident, but doesn't have much help to give Mara. Back in the corridor, Mara heads into this machine room where she picks up some gasoline. Before leaving back outside, Mara grabs a map of the utility corridor. Returning outside, Mara notices an indentation missing an item, one that would unlock the way to Witchwood. A new enemy shows up in front of her, the Large Puddle. Large puddles are similar to the smaller puddles as they slowly trudge towards you. They're just as easy to avoid, but take a lot more shots to kill. Mara heads back to the theater and reads a memo about a rundown door in Ocean Kingdom, so rundown that it could be easily burned. Mara slowly lifts the curtain. What is that thing? Heading down, Mara checks out the weird creature, which was thankfully dead, then hears a phone ringing. She answers the phone, the person on the other end talking about the roots. There were 7 in total, and they cut into all but one. That one they preserved for prosperity. The person hangs up, then Mara is faced with another new enemy, the Goblin. Goblins are small but fast. While they're sprinting towards you, if you shoot them enough times, they stagger back, meaning if you can keep up a good rhythm of shooting them, goblins should never manage to reach you. After taking care of some goblins, Mara finds a valve to turn on the theater sprinklers and the water tank connected to them before reading a memo mentioning that the Mermaids in the Seven Seas ride uses the same battery as the animatronic crow. She breaks a cane blocking the door and heads outside. As she enters the central area for the park, another person shows up, this time an officer. Speaking with him, he tells Mara to go home before saying he's Harrison James, and he was supposed to be here hours ago if some kid didn't slash his car's tires. He asks for the location of Natalie Crow, and Mara tells him where he could find her. Harrison tells Mara to go back to her car, but come on, that's not happening. Mara then opens the secret panel behind the animatronic crow, which revealed a hidden button, but Mara got another call. Answering it, the person on the other end talks about how the guest first emerged 2 years ago, which they believe was intentional, then hangs up. Mara goes back and presses the button, which opened access to 2 more buttons, one to turn the crow and one to move the crow forward, but the crow didn't have any power, so it couldn't move. Mara then used the bronze key to open a way into this train room. Exploring around, Mara found a computer that also required a disc, similar to the one in the dungeon. With nothing else to do in this room, she goes outside and heads back to Haunted Hilltop, entering the staff hall where Natalie was, and reads a drawing that showed items needed for the machines in the dig site, so she'd need a crane candle, the machine chain, and a bottle of gasoline. While heading back to the corridor with the safe, Mara finds a map for Haunted Hilltop near the entrance to Witchwood. Within the corridor, Mara sees an arrow pointing from a book to a safe. The book mentions the year Selena died, so Mara heads back to the crypt, reads Selena's grave, where she died in 1872, and went back up, and putting the date into the safe and gets the crane candle. With the crane candle obtained, she first goes to the entrance of Ocean Kingdom, slowly retracting the spikes guarding the entrance. Entering Ocean Kingdom, she sees the door to the storage, but it wouldn't open. Mara then finds a memo which talked about the golden key, as it was encased in resin and hidden in the theater fairy's head, so she'd either need fire or acid to melt the resin. She tries to get into Neptune's palace, but the restaurant was closed and the door was barred from the other side. Mara enters Nemo's Adventure, another save area, and reads some rules for the minigame within the area. This is where the shotgun was housed, so remembering the note from earlier, Mara shoots the plastic shark 4 times and the plastic dolphin once, which unlock the container housing the shotgun, which she grabs. This gives me an achievement, Shotgun. Leaving the submarine, Mara is face to knee with a new enemy, the Lumber. Lumbers are big and bulky and take a lot to kill. They yield a pipe-like thing which they will try to crush you with. As you damage the lumber, it will occasionally stagger, falling to the floor, leaving it open for high damage. Now that Mara has the shotgun, she easily takes down the hulking brute. Mara then reads another memo, talking about how the theater's sprinkler system was only hooked up to the water tank, then locates the map of the area. When trying to enter the Seven Seas ride, she's blocked by noxious fumes coming from the vent below, so she decided not to enter. She reads another memo, this one mentioning the acid bottle in the dungeon, saying it could be refilled in the underground level. Mara then enters the Sunken Treasure arcade, but sadly all the games were unpowered, and meets up with another person. He eventually introduces himself as Marvin Trumbull, a business partner with Mr. Crow. He was also looking for him, but also didn't know where he was. He very honestly says that Crow has gone and done it, but doesn't elaborate on what it is. He says he was going to take an elevator down to see Crow, but Tolman, Crew's road excavation guy, was near there and didn't want to meet up with him. He thinks about using a different elevator, but Mara says they're broken, which Marvin laughs at saying it depends, but doesn't elaborate and leaves. Mara enters the area he was blocking, another staff corridor, and takes the map of the area. Another phone was ringing, and answering it, the person on the other end talks about how he never wanted the gold, his father wanted it, so he bought the land. This means the person on the other end is Edward Crow. He hangs up, and Mara checks around the corridor. She opens a hatch, which opens a way back to the fairy pond, and she checks this door, which was locked. Kicking the door reveals a silver keyhole, but she doesn't have a silver key. She then enters the lounge and sees Harrison chilling on the couch. She reads a memo which talks about the root excavation site, stating that they were locked from the break room in the northwest underground area. Mara opens up a way into the lounge from the western corridor and talks with Harrison. He hasn't found Natalie yet and was in the break room as he was hiding from the guests. Mara suggests for him to leave, but he's dedicated to his job and wouldn't leave until he found Natalie. Unfortunately, he didn't have anything useful to say, so Mara leaves. Through the corridor, she enters the restaurant, reading a couple of memos, one that talks about the code to the restaurant door being too easy to guess, and how to open the treasure chest in the restaurant. One needed a trident, and needed to stand in front of the chest so that all the sea monster heads would be looking at you, which would unlock the chest. The sea monsters do get stuck, so you need to tap on the glass to reorient them. Mara got another phone call, with Crow asking if her daughter was here, which Mara confirms. He says he told her not to do that and asks Mara to get her out. She tells him that she got hurt, and Mr. Crow stays silent for a second before acknowledging this, then hangs up. Going to leave, Mara guesses the passcode, entering 1234, which opens the door. However, she heads back into the corridor and opens the gate to the crate in the middle, but nothing happened. Mara begins to travel back down to Hilltop, but notices the mushroom door being open. Entering inside, she moves some ropes and speaks with the king, who says he invited Amadita Rubsons to dinner, but he's dining alone. This puzzle is weird. In order to solve it, all you have to do is just eat all the mushrooms. Some hurt you, some poison you, some don't do anything, so as long as you have some healing items, you'll be good. After eating all the mushrooms, Mara speaks to the king again, who thanks her for dining with him and reveals another little mushroom boy. This one also grants another wish, interpreting Mara's as her wanting to increase the power of her handgun, which he grants. Mara heads back to the manor and reads this painting, which mentions how the guy in the painting was blamed for the death between 10:20 and 11:15. Using that phrasing, if you set the left clock to 10:20 using the crank handle and the right clock to 11:15, the painting will release an egg-shaped ruby. Mara heads back to the swan room and uses the gemstone to control the swan, maneuvering it towards her until she can grab the machine chain. Once leaving the swan room, Mara is faced with a new enemy, the Grinner. These enemies are exactly the same as normal guests, but when they die, their bodies explode into shrapnel. Mara re-enters the theater and shoots to head off the ferry, but without a way to melt the resin, she leaves. As she runs around looking for something to solve, she encounters a new trap, falling chandeliers. Going under them makes them fall on you, but you can shoot the chandeliers to force them to fall. Still searching, she goes back to the cell and sees a new enemy, the medium puddle. This one retracts its face unless it's attacking you, but other than that, it's really similar, if not the same as the large puddle. Continuing to wander, Mara finds herself back in the western corridor, where her face was protruding from the crate door she opened. Shooting it didn't do anything, and as she got closer, it just retracted itself, so that's weird. Even weirder, this room has changed, now having the same number, 2106, written on the wall. Before she could leave, the second mini-boss emerges from the crate. The creature keeps trying to charge towards you, but if you keep hitting it, the beast gets stunned. It goes down after several shots with the shotgun. Mara heads back up to the dig site, where she now had everything she needed to fix up the place. She fills the tank up with some gasoline, uses the crank handle to pour something into the hole, and adds the machine chain to the gears to make the pulley work. She lifts up a strange mask covered in resin and uses a flamethrower to melt the resin, grabbing the woeful mask. With the mask, Mara returns to Haunted Hilltop, placing the mask in the indentation, which opened the way to Witchwood. Witchwood contains a maze where the path is blocked by pedestals with symbols on them. There's other pedestals that have glowing versions of the symbols. Whatever symbol the glowing pedestal is showing will lower the pedestals of the same symbol across the maze. Kicking this pedestal changes what symbol is shown, allowing you to traverse the maze. Once Mara reaches the center, she grabs the trident from within the cauldron, which lowers all the pedestals. Once she leaves Witchwood, she sees new traps, a poison sprayer, which are scattered about the park and are represented as little crow heads, and poison mines, which unleashes a cloud of poison when stepped on. Both of these traps can be disabled by shooting them. With the trident, Mara heads back to the restaurant and begins to redirect the sea monster heads to the center of the restaurant by repeatedly tapping their housing. Once all the heads were looking at the center, the treasure chest opens, giving Mara the silver key. Within the restaurant, she sees a soda fountain with flavors of strawberry, lime, pineapple, and grape. At the other end of the restaurant, she notices the statue of these 4 fruits, snacking up from grape, lime, pineapple, and strawberry. And putting this into the soda fountain, the menu board flips, revealing secret text that gets the access code for the extra secrets map in the lounge. Knowing this, Mara goes back to the lounge, inputting 8891 into the display case, and grabs the secret map, getting me an achievement. Secret map. This map is accessed from the map menu and shows the locations of all 15 secrets, including ones you've already obtained. Now knowing where a bunch of the secrets were, I decided to do some backtracking and get as many as I could. I first checked the dig site where I found the shotgun laser sight in this bucket. I next went to Witchwood, where I found some magnum ammo located in this corner to the left of the entrance, which can only be found after obtaining the trident. Back in the main area, Mara can now access the gift shop with the silver key, and this place had a few secrets. The first is behind the counter. Within the refrigerator lied a little mushroom boy who would grant Mara a wish, this one to increase the ammo capacity of her shotgun. She takes the wish, and the shotgun can now hold 4 bullets instead of 2. The other secret requires a puzzle to be solved. Reading this note gives you a list of 3 items in the shop: the Haunted Hilltop stuffed toy, the classic Pro Country rubber doll, and the Fairy Tale Town action figure. You can go around the shop and check the prices of each, so $10 for the rubber doll, $4.25 for the action figure, and $5.50 for the stuffed toy. Adding these prices together gives you $19.75, which you can input into the cash register to obtain the Magnum and an achievement, Magnum Revolver. The Magnum is the most powerful weapon in the game, at the downside of being the only weapon to not have renewable ammo, as all its ammo comes from secrets. Mara heads back to where she entered the park in the staff parking lot and uses the silver key to unlock the trunk of this car, getting her some running shoes, which lets her run way faster than she did before. This also earns me another achievement, running shoes. Done with secret hunting for the time being, Mara heads back into the arcade, using the silver key to open the power box, returning power to the games inside. There's 4 games in the arcade: Sharpshooter, where you shoot fish to increase your score, but shooting the skulls resets your score; a hoops game where Mara starts bawling; Speedboat, where you drive a boat that can speed up to collect stars, but touching bombs reset your score; Dolphin Dash, where you make a dolphin jump to pop balloons, increasing your score, but touching the spike balls reset your score; and the Mermaid's Quiz, which has trivia questions for the time period. Now, let's see how you fare on the Mermaid's Quiz! Question 1. What is the tallest building in the world? Remember, using answers for future time periods won't necessarily be correct. If you answered the Empire State Building, you are incorrect. The tallest building in the world was the Sears Tower. Question 2. What is the highest grossing film of all time? If you answered Star Wars, you'd be incorrect. The highest grossing film of all time was E.T. Question 3. What caused the extinction of dinosaurs? If you answered volcanic eruption, you'd be correct. Question 4. How many countries are there in Europe? If you answered 34, you'd be correct. Question 5. How many planets are there in our solar system? If you answered 8, you are incorrect. There were 9 planets in our solar system. Question 6. What is the approximate population of Earth? If you answered 6 billion, you are incorrect. Earth had approximately 5 billion people in the 80s and 90s. Question 7. What kinds of food should you eat most of each day? If you answered bread, cereal, and pasta, you are correct. Question 8. Which area of the tongue is used for tasting sweet things? If you answered the back, you are incorrect. The tip of the tongue is used to taste sweet things. So, how well did you fare in the Mermaid's Quiz? After getting 5 of the Mermaid's questions right in a row, I get an achievement, Quizmaster. Mara heads over to the change machine and flips the note to read an interesting message. It talks about a strange formula involving the arcade game, stating the dolphin game needs to be twice the score of the mermaid game, the boat game needs to be twice the score of the dolphin game, and the shark game needs to be twice the score of the boat game. So Mara resets her score for the mermaid game by getting an answer incorrect, then getting 1 answer correct, then got a score of 2 in the dolphin game, a score of 4 in the boats, and a score of 8 for the fish game. With all the scores obtained, this makes the data disk drop from the change machine. Mara enters the western corridor and encounters a new trap, a fake item. These explode when interacting, but all isn't lost as there are signs to indicate they're different, such as their color. She also encounters a new enemy, I guess. I think it shows up in one other location, but this thing pops out of a vent and blocks your path. Shooting it makes it go away. Mara uses the silver key on the door in the corridor, which gets her access to Tolman's office. Mara begins a conversation with him, but he isn't helpful, which he agrees to not being helpful. He tells Mara to go home, even mentioning Arthur. When Mara asks about the guests, he says she doesn't want to know what they are, so Mara asks how to fix the elevators, which No Help Tolman says to figure out herself. So Mara gets right to it. She notices a metal cabinet with a musical note and a keyboard nearby. She uses the TV to watch some VSH tapes about the Hindenburg, the Titanic, the Plague, and Hiroshima, but the tapes were skipping, though the parts they were skipping showed letters C, A, F, E, respectively. Putting these events in chronological order spells F-A-C-E with the letters, and playing that on the keyboard opens the metal cabinet, allowing Mara to turn power back onto the elevators. Mara tells Tolman she solved his puzzle, which Tolman says she liked, which Mara was silent to. As she goes to leave, Tolman tells her not to go down there, as she regretted it, but Mara was okay with this fate. Before heading down the elevators, Mara decided to complete a few things. She first heads to the dungeon, where she can access the computer now. The terminal had an open window labeled Prisoner, which had different multiple choice options of legs, arms, heads, and eyes. By using the depictions of the different prisoners inside the dungeon and inputting how many of each body part they have in the terminal, for example the wolf has 4 legs, 0 arms, 1 head, and 2 eyes, the corresponding prisoner door opens. Doing this with the mermaid, 0 legs, 2 arms, 1 head, 2 eyes, her cell opens, and Mara grabs the empty bottle of acid. You can do this with the other cells, but they don't reward anything important. The Cyclops has 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 head, 1 eye, and the Serpent has 0 legs, 0 arms, 1 head, 2 eyes. Mara then enters the staff hallway through the Iron Maiden and notices some magnum ammo behind this door. You can actually get this secret early if you do the Iron Maiden before opening the shortcut from the staff hallway to the dungeon. Thankfully, you can close this door, take the long way around, and still get the secret. Mara was now ready and finally takes one of the elevators down, the northeast elevator. Down at the underground level, there's a lot of enemies. As she runs through, she finds several gates leading to several different root excavation sites, but all the gates were locked. She crawls through a pipe which takes her to the southeast underground and locates an entrance to the central area, but had no idea how to open the mechanism. She soon locates and rides a minecart, taking her to the southwest underground. There wasn't anything to do in the southwest region, so she crawls through another pipe, taking her to the northwest part. Mara then realizes she can use one of the elevators to access the delivery garage, an area otherwise inaccessible. She takes the southwest elevator up and enters the garage, where something was trying to break free from a crate. Mara bravely opened the crate. Oh, it's just Julie. Mara helps her out, where Julie promises to help Mara if she ever needed anything. Mara examines a diagram depicting an uncharged battery, a charged battery, and the animatronic crow, then reads a memo stating there's an elevator behind the crow, but it was powered off and could be powered on in Mr. Crow's office. The way into the delivery garage from Ocean Kingdom is unlocked, so Mara could re-enter the garage easily. With nothing really obtained from the garage, Mara heads back down, going back to the northwest underground, where she finds a break room. At the back, Mara flips a switch to open access to the root excavations. As she tries to leave, the third mini-boss breaks into the room. This guy also charges towards Mara, but does so slowly. Occasionally it spits out acid mines, but otherwise Mara takes it down easily. And the puddle it melted into light a license plate with the numbers 2663. Mara then reads a note which talks about the break room security gate having numbers 3626. Okay, I know where this is going. Mara inputs 2663 into the security gate and leaves the break room. With the root sites now open, Mara enters the Friday site, where she finds the acid tank, so tops off the acid bottle. There wasn't anything else here, thus Mara heads into the different excavation sites. She enters Site Wednesday, which is another save room, and had a map of the underground level. She then entered Site Tuesday, which had this odd machine. Examining it further, Mara realized that she needs to put something between the clamps. She next heads into Site Monday, where Tolman and Marvin were bickering. Tolman explains that the roots had an outer shell of copper, but the inside was pure gold. Tolman also states Marvin is on the run from the Brazilian authorities, as he and Crow took the gold from the roots, implanted it into the rocks, and sold them as if they were from a Brazilian mine. Marvin only came back so he could drag Mr. Crow down with them. After the conversation, Mara enters the Sunday site, where she spots a generator. She didn't know how to turn it off, so decides to destroy it. Before doing so, she grabs the map of the central underground area, then shoots the generator, which unpowered the electrified doorknob to Mr. Crow's office. She then enters the Saturday site, where she examines a model of the roots. Now that Mara filled the acid bottle, she heads up to the theater to get the golden key. She starts by pouring some acid into the water tank, then releases the acid via the sprinklers, which melts the resin containing the key, letting her grab it. She then heads down to the staff hallway and opens the way to Mr. Crow's office. Crow calls Mara again, saying he never had a plan for the gold, and talks about the plan between him and Marvin involving the mine in Brazil. Mara examined this picture frame containing a photo of Mr. Crow and his daughter, but Mara noticed the frame could be pulled, which moved the statue, opening a way into a save room. Mara then looks at some slides detailing different variations of the guests. The standard, the goblin, the spindle, the lumber, the grinner, and the puddle. She also pressed a button which opened a way into the control room. Looking to her right, she finds a board explaining how to get the code to the elevator switch in the control room. Each file in the slideshow has a number attached to it, and this gives you hints on which numbers are needed for the code. The first number is in Grinner and Goblin, which both happen to have only a 9. The second is Guest, but not in Puddle or Spindle, and the only different number Guest has from Puddle or Spindle is 2. The third is in Lumber and Goblin, but not in Puddle, and Lumber and Goblin share 1, where Puddle does not. And the final number is the only number missing from any of the file numbers, which happens to be 8. So the code to the elevator is 9218, and if you didn't want to solve that, the code is given to you in the save room behind the statue. Once leaving the save room, Mara meets up with Natalie, who says the statue was of her mother. As they talk, Natalie asks what Mara was going to do when she found her father, and asks her not to kill him, which Mara says that wasn't even her plan as she wants to talk to him. Natalie asks Mara to bring him to her so she could speak with her father, which Mara reluctantly agrees to. With the code obtained, Mara heads into the control room and inputs it into the keypad, letting her flip a switch to power on the elevator to the central underground area. She then notices a camera aimed at her car and speaks to Arthur through it, where he asks if they're going to leave, which Mara hesitates before saying yes. As she tried to leave, the final mini-boss broke into the control room. This guy basically acts like a worse version of the Spindle, just a lot tankier. After several shots with a shotgun, it goes down, and I get an achievement, Thorough, for killing all 4 optional mini-bosses. In order to get out of the room, Mar had to set the security panel to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but the panel didn't have a keypad, the nearby button resetting the numbers already inputted. Instead, the keypad are the floor tiles, so by pressing the tiles corresponding to the numbers, Mara is able to leave. Mara now heads back to Ocean Kingdom, where she uses the golden key to open the door to the staff area of the Seven Seas ride. Crow calls her again here and talks about the guests, saying they can't leave the park lest they infect anybody else. Mara tries to ask what they are, but Crow only says they're irreversible. Inside the staff area, she finds a control panel for the boat ride and realizes she'll need help if she's to get the ride moving while she's inside the boat, thus she goes back to Julie to ask for her help. Julie happily agrees and heads to the control room, but the way to enter the boat was still blocked by noxious fumes, so Mara couldn't board the boat just yet. While looking for a way to stop the fumes, Mara enters the train room and solves the puzzle within. The train on the top, Orion's Odyssey, combined all 4 train car styles. On the bottom lie 2 trains, the Earl of Edgecombe, which combined the Arabella and Bernadette styles, and the Duke of Farnham, which combined the Arabella and Delilah styles. You can press a button on each bottom train, which shows what the train looks like. The Duke of Farnham has a blue train car and a red train car, and the Earl of Edgecombe has a red train car and a yellow train car. Because both of these trains use the Arabella design style and both have a red train car, it can be inferred that the red train car is the Arabella style. That also means the blue car on the Farnham train is the Delilah style and the yellow car on the Edgecombe is the Bernadette style. You can inference these on Orion's train, so it uses, in order, the Bernadette style, the Delilah style, the Arabella style, and a 4th style we'll call Cynthia. Find a TARP lies another computer, and using the data disk, you can input what style each part of Orion's train is made of. The train car style in order for the Orion is BDAC, and inputting this into the computer unlocks a compartment in the train, giving you the flamethrower and an achievement, Flamethrower. With the flamethrower in hand, Mara goes to the Ocean Kingdom and burns the door to the storage room. Inside, she finds a little mushroom boy, this one interpreting Mara's as her way to improve the Magnum Revolver, and grants her wish. Mara then notices the scale weighing an octopus. It weighed in ounces, but the dial was sporadic, not much help to how much it actually weighed. Beneath the scale was the keypad, but without any code, Mara leaves it for now. Near the front of the storage room, Mara notices another one of those bell owls, this one hooting 8 times before stopping. Remembering how the previous one worked, Mara went back to the manor's entrance and rang the bell 8 times, which flipped the fake window, granting Mara more ammo for the Magnum. She then entered the manor and reopened the painting to the mushroom boy, finally taking his offer to increase the range of her flamethrower now that she had one. This earns me an achievement, wishes granted, for upgrading every weapon. While exploring, she re-enters the entrance bathroom and realizes she could melt the rib cage clogging the toilet with acid. Once she flushes the melted bone, she finds more Magnum ammo. Mara then heads back underground, where she enters the only root site she didn't enter, Site Thursday. There was another computer here, which had something to do with gas pressure, and Harrison is here too, I guess. Harrison was trying to turn off the gas bin, but doesn't know how to do it. He also says he ran into Natalie, who seemed ill and also told him to go home. Mara looked at the control panel hooked up to the gas chimney and saw a manual override lever. When she tried to pull the lever, it didn't work, and she read a note saying total gas pressure needed to be exactly 50. The computer as well controlled the gas pressure, so she begins fiddling with the different gases before forming a solution of 13 units of carbon monoxide, 10 units of sulfur dioxide, 7 units of nitrogen dioxide, and 20 units of phosgen. This brings the total gas pressure units to 50 and allows her to override the gas bin, stopping the fumes from wafting up. Harrison congratulates Mara on solving the puzzle and says they should leave, asking if Mara is coming with them, which Mara says not yet. She instead heads back up to Ocean Kingdom, as the way to the Seven Seas ride was no longer blocked by noxious fumes. She boards the middle row of the boat and gives Julie the A-OK to start the ride. Unfortunately, Mara couldn't enjoy the full ride as she's stopped by a plastic whale, one that's supposed to be moved in the control room, but I guess Julie didn't know. Mara gets out of the boat and opens this treasure chest, which reveals a console of 4 buttons. Only one could be pressed at a time, and they moved one of the 4 mermaid heads forward. On the other side, she pulled an ornate switch, which opened the door back to the control panel. Mara went back to the control room. Oh shit. Well, Julie is gone and the control panel is broken, so it looks like the ride is stuck where it is. Mara re-enters the ride and finds a second chest on the other side, which worked the same as the first chest, but this one lifts up the mermaid instead. She makes it so the chests are making the second mermaid closer and lift it up and opens the mermaid chest cavity and finds a battery. Oh no, it's just shotgun shells. So she makes the third mermaid closer and lifts it up and checks inside, and this one did have a battery. Mara goes underground and heads for Site Tuesday, where these electrical obstacles blocked her path momentarily before losing electricity. Inside the site, she uses the machine and charges the battery. As she heads to the animatronic crow to power it up, it was now nighttime, and all the guests were sleeping or dead. Either way, they're not bothering Mara. She makes it to the crow and turns the crow around, putting in the battery before turning it around again and initiating the walking sequence. With the crow out of the way, Mara is able to take the lift down to the central area. She enters a room filled with guests, and after clearing them out, presses the button on the left and right side of the room, which opens the path forward. And here, oh come on! He didn't even do anything! Someone shot Harrison, and unfortunately, Mara is far too late to do anything about it. Mara pushes forward and enters a room that has gates with numbers engraved into them and a bunch of mining lamps. She reads a memo describing the lamps can be ignited by shooting at them and extinguished by, I assume, shooting at them again. Oh man, this is gonna be a wacky puzzle. Are we for real right now? So this room does have a puzzle attached to it, but I never got the chance to solve it because it has a fun little failsafe where if the gun you're shooting with runs out of ammo, it just opens all the gates for you. Since handgun ammo is basically free, you could just empty the magazine until it has one, enter the room, and presto, after shooting one lamp, you don't need to interact with this puzzle in the slightest. As she heads down the walkway, she meets up with Tolman, where she explains that Harrison was shot, and as she asks Tolman who might have done it, Marvin walks up to the two of them, holding them at gunpoint. Marvin explains he's in way too deep to go back, and Tolman agrees, saying he is as well, but Mara wasn't, and told Marvin to let her go. Marvin disagreed, saying Mara knew too much. Just before he goes to shoot the two of them, something rattles from the vents and breaks free, knocking Marvin off the platform and into the abyss below. Julie then pops out from the vent, trying to orient herself. Mara and Tolman help Julie out, and she explains that when she was helping Mara, something dragged her into the vent system, and while inside, there were a bunch of guests that shook her around. Tolman explained that the guests didn't actually want to hurt them, they were trying to communicate, but couldn't. Mara introduces Julie to Tolman, and the two of them go to deal with Harrison's body, and Mara tells them where to find Natalie, and asks them to check on Arthur. Julie happily agrees to this, but Tolman seemed concerned for Mara's safety, asking what she was going to do, and she tells him what I came here to do. Tolman says he'll be waiting for her by her car before him and Julie leave. Before heading forward, there are still 2 secrets Mara needed to solve, one in the crypt and one involving the scale and the octopus. Mara started with the crypt puzzle, and I'm gonna be honest, I got completely stumped here. Inside the crypt lies a gate with a plaque that reads, "Here lies Ophelia, tragically drowned, daughter, sister, human." I thought the puzzle had something to do with the compass puzzle, as the memo in the crypt says the death dates wouldn't be used until later, so I thought that was part of this puzzle, but the death dates got me nowhere. I thought maybe it had something to do with daughter, sister, human, or the fact that she drowned, but that didn't lead me anywhere either. The human being in all caps struck me as odd, but I couldn't figure out what to do to get that to anything with the cardinal ordinal directions. Well, I was forgetful, as the game blatantly tells you how to solve this puzzle with the memo inside Pike's office. As a refresher, the memo talks about how the dungeon and crypt both had doors electronically locked with the dungeon's computer, and St. Ophelia's crypt is the door in the crypt that's locked. So what you're supposed to do is use the dungeon's puzzle logic for human, by inputting 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 head, 2 eyes into the terminal in the dungeon, and then heading back to the crypt, the gate blocking Ophelia's coffin is lowered. Mara examines the coffin, seeing a wax figure of Ophelia, and notices a drawer underneath, which contained the real Ophelia's medical ID and a first aid handbook, which increases the power of medkits. This also earns an achievement, Medkit Pro. The final secret, the one involving the scale, is solved by going into Nemo's adventure, then shooting the plastic octopus, which puts information about the octopus on the screen inside. This tells you that this specific octopus weighs exactly 1,825 ounces, so when you input that into the scale's keypad, it gives you some magnum ammo. With all the secrets found, I get an achievement, Secret Hunter. With everything optional Mara could do done, she gets back to the central underground area, and unhooks the chains holding up the gate, which lets her enter this nice little spring area where she cleans herself up. At the back, Mara sees a ladder and begins to climb down, and down, and down, and how far does this ladder go? Once she finally reaches the bottom, she finds herself in Mr. Crow's lab. Mara examines a strange board filled with photos of everyone she's met, including her, the people on the top being alive and the people below being dead. Mara finds a note but couldn't make any sense of it. On top of a counter, she finds 5 vials of a mysterious green liquid. Mara then speaks to Mr. Crow through an intercom where he says hello to Mara, or actually Elaine, as Mara has been a fake name this entire time. He asks Elaine to pick up the green vials on the counter, which she does, first emptying her pockets of everything she's collected thus far. She returns to the intercom and tells Mr. Crow she has the vials, and he opens the door. Heading inside, Mara walks up to a strange green pool, then talks to Mr. Crow face to face. He was happy to see her again, or rather see that she was still kicking, as it's been 2 years since Elaine was infected by the guest in the cell. Elaine says the infection's getting worse and they couldn't cure it, so she escaped to meet up with him. Crow asks if she was that determined to kill him, but Elaine says no, she only came here to tell him something. She is going to die from the infection, but she realizes he's infected too. He explains that everyone who came in contact with the guest are infected, but they didn't know it originally. The first guest that emerged from the pool, the green water behind him, he tried to help. He put the guest in a holding cell, the same one Elaine got attacked from. He also explains that because he's been exposed to it so much, his infection spread rapidly, and says that because of what she's done today, she might have a similar effect. Crow then goes on to say he deliberately decided not to pay Elaine's medical fees as he knew there wouldn't be a cure, but he made a cure containing the vials Elaine is now holding. 5 vials, 6 people left alive who are infected, but Crow says he wasn't going to be taking the cure. He continues his explanation, now talking about the roots in the pool. They were a gateway where humans traveled through and arrived here. The reason those who emerged don't resemble humans is because of the excavations of the roots, as it broke whatever made it work, and the more and more it was harvested, the more and more twisted and broken the humans emerged, but the gateway still technically works. Crow talks about the first guest and how it was barely transformed and could actually speak, and that the guest told Crow exactly why he came, which Crow wrote down word for word on a piece of paper. Crow says he won't live long, but he wants to see what he's destroyed, so he was going to go into the pool. He gives Mara a piece of paper before asking her to kill him if he comes back out of the pool mutated. Crow then sits back down and leans back, falling into the pool. The roots begin to retract, and then Crow re-emerges from the pool, which meant Elaine had to take him down. Mutated Crow has a few attacks. He punches the ground, which makes a section of the arena drop rubble. He wades around, aiming at you, and then jams the ground. He does a body slam attack, and he can also circle sweep the arena with his hand. By using the Magnum, Elaine takes down the mutated Crow, who is now inches from death, and begged Elaine to kill him. With one final Magnum bullet, Edward Crow is killed. Elaine then takes the cure, and we see that she gave it to everyone, now far away from Crow Country. In a future playthrough, I realized you could read the piece of paper Crow gives you, and it reads, 2106, uninhabitable, ruin, we come 1988, last chance, warn, stop, change. At the end, Elaine gets ranked for her time spent at the park based on how many heals used, how many hints she used, how many secrets she found, and how many bonus lives used. I didn't mention this, but there's a Crow fortune teller machine that gives you hints on how to progress the story. You get at least 10 hints. With what she did, Elaine managed to get an A rank. And that was the first playthrough of Crow Country, netting me 3 achievements, complete for finishing the game at least once, B rank for achieving at least a B rank, and A rank for obtaining at least an A rank. Because of the rank I got, I unlocked 2 bonus items, the Crowbar and the Crow Launcher. The Crowbar is a melee tool which lets you destroy crates and glass bottles without having to expend any ammo, and the Crow Launcher is a grenade launcher with infinite ammo. You also unlock Crow Crest for beating the game, which places a bunch of crystal birds throughout the map, but there's no achievement tied to this, so I didn't do it. The final achievement was for attaining an S rank. The requirements for the rank, I believe, are as followed: 10 or less healing items used, no hints used, all secrets found, and no bonus lives used. Other than healing, none of these requirements were much issue, as healing is the only reason I didn't get the S rank in my first playthrough. The tracker for heals used in this game is... I don't like it. Medkits and antidotes both count as 1 use, but large medkits count as 2. I really can't understand why this is. I mean, sure, it uses both a medkit and an antidote, but like, that's its purpose. Making it cost 2 uses for using just 1 diminishes its value significantly. Bonus lives are also weird. I'm not exactly certain how it works, but there's a setting to turn them on which I didn't have toggled, so if I died, I'd have to load back to a previous save. I assumed the bonus lives are just a fancy way of saying death, so I did my S-rank attempts without dying. I did a few runs before having a successful one, but there's not much to talk about with those runs because I died so early on. At this point, I was good at dodging around enemies, so I'd primarily be doing that to avoid encounters, only killing enemies if I absolutely thought they'd hurt me. Puzzles also aren't randomized, so since I've already solved everything before, I could rush through the game. Without further ado, here's what I did in my S-rank run. At the start of the run, I turned on the crowbar, then picked up the pocket light and the handgun laser sight. Next, I inputted the fairy code and said the passphrase, as you don't need to discover the information in order to progress. I obtained the bronze key and entered Haunted Hilltop. I killed the zombies blocking the way to the manor and crypt, then entered the crypt. I shot the clock, which skipped solving the puzzle, and quickly killed the mini-boss. I then entered the save code and got the crank, before opening the way to let Julie inside. I next go to the manor, ringing the bell 8 times to get the magnum ammo, then head inside and grab the ruby. I head through the staff hallway into the theater to open the shortcut. From the theater I enter the mushroom and eat all the mushrooms to upgrade the handgun. This is the only point in the entire run where you are forced to take damage, as to my knowledge there isn't a way to solve the puzzle otherwise. Most unfortunately, you'll need to use at least 2 heals here. This brought me to 4 heals used. I crank the way into Ocean Kingdom and get the shotgun. I used the medkit when entering the Western Corridor, which meant I was at 5 heals used. I unlocked the shortcut here to Fairy Tale Town and grabbed the laser sight from the Magnum. I then grabbed the secret map from the lounge. I don't think this is needed, but I wanted it just in case I missed a secret along the way. Inside Fairy Tale Town, I grabbed the machine chain and solved the dig site puzzle for the Willful Mask. Witchwood was next, where I got the trident and Magnum ammo. I used the trident to get the silver key, where I used it to power back on the elevators in Tolman's office. I next powered on the arcade and grabbed the security disc. On the way to get the acid bottle, I got poisoned by a poison sprayer, so used an antidote, and then got crushed by a chandelier, so used a medkit, bringing the total heals used to 7. I grabbed the acid bottle, the first aid handbook for better heals, the Magnum, the shotgun ammo capacity upgrade, the flamethrower, the running boots, the Magnum upgrade, and the Magnum ammo in the Ocean Kingdom storage room before heading to the underground level. Here I went into the break room, unlocked the access to the roots, killed the break room mini boss, then refilled the acid bottle and stopped the gas chimney from blocking the entrance to the 7 Seas. I then went up to the delivery garage and freed Julie so she owed me a favor. On the way back to the theater, I stepped on an acid mine and used an antidote, bringing the total heals used to 8. I next got the golden key and remembered I didn't shoot the generator in Route Sunday, so went and did that, then entered Crow's office to power the central elevator. I killed the mini-boss in the control room and headed back to Ocean Kingdom to open the way into the operating room for the 7 Seas. I called in on Julie's owed favor and grabbed the battery. While collecting the remaining secrets, I had to use the medkit to heal, which brought my heals used to 9. I grabbed the flamethrower range increase, the Magnum ammo in the staff hallway, and the Magnum ammo in the restroom, which meant I had all the secrets. I went back underground where I got poisoned by a sprayer, rather unfairly. I mean, come on, the poison was gone! This brought the heals used to 10, meaning I can no longer heal or use an antidote for the rest of the run. But that's not what I thought while playing. All the way back in the mushroom, I thought I had already used a heal, so for the entire game, I've been adding 1 non-existent heal to my mental heals used tracker, which meant to me this was the 11th healing item used. I could have restarted here, but I decided since I was literally almost at the final boss, I would finish the run for practice. I charged the battery, plugged it into the crow, and headed down to the central underground area. I dodged the enemies, pressing the buttons while avoiding them, to continue. I briefly saw how the mining lamp puzzle worked before running out of handgun ammo and triggering the failsafe again. I almost got killed by Marvin before Julie came in with the rescue and descended down to the final boss. I quickly disabled every bear trap before beginning the fight. Mutated Crow goes down with the Magnum again, and I finished him off with the handgun, which meant I completed the run, and got the S rank, which again was a surprise to me because I thought it was at 11 heals. This earned me the final achievement of Crow Country, S rank. Also, earning the S rank unlocks the Crow Wings, which lets you fast travel between the save rooms after interacting with the save point. And thus ends my journey to obtaining every achievement in Crow Country. If you are using this video as a tutorial and I didn't explain or cover something, feel free to ask in the comments.